was sitting a moment ago. All right, so let's open this up. All right, good morning, everyone. I hope you're having a beautiful and blessed morning. As you can see, for all the Nigerian people will know, I got an outfit that I got from there while I was there earlier this year, or a couple months ago, actually. I decided to wear this morning, so I just kind of wanted to look good in the Nigerian outfit. But I hope you're having an amazing morning. So the other week we went through, I was reading The Power of Five, like I talked about, right, by John Maxwell. And we talked about just a few different things. Just let me recollect it real fast. We were just talking about, mentoring potential leaders, leadership values, lifting people to add value to them, loving people. Basically making people feel like you have value, but just mainly leading others as well. Learning how to lead others, like live what you say, is what we mentioned. Lifting people to add value to them, love the people you lead, and looking for potential people to mentor and lead them. And this week we are talking about significance. I'm only going to read. There's 4 things he wrote down. John Maxwell wrote down. We're only going to read 2 of them today. But right now, we're just starting off. So I'm currently, if you do have this book, like I mentioned in the week, you can always follow along. So I'm just kind of reading through it a little bit, what he says, and just adding some of my own input slightly, but just showing you what he says. And he calls this the power number 5, significance. And he starts off with saying, while almost everyone starts out chasing success, many experience a shift towards significance along the way. Success is mainly about myself, my career, my agenda, my possessions, my desires. Significance is mainly about others, their dreams, their needs, their potential. So, he says he's known many unfulfilled successful people, but everyone he knows living a life of significance is fulfilled. So, 2 of the things he likes to talk about is great food and great conversation. So for years, he used to make it a regular practice to come to every table and start conversations by asking questions as people engage and share their thoughts to make the magic happen. One of his favorite questions to ask is, what is your best thought on how to live a fulfilled life? And throughout many years, he's heard dozens of responses, and over, he hears something along the lines of intentionally add value to others every day. That is the essence of significance, he says. And he says many years ago, he received a gift from his assistant, and as he unwrapped it, he saw that it was a book, and he immediately was intrigued by the title, The Greatest Story Ever Told. He couldn't wait to read it. But when he opened it, he was shocked. The pages were blank. Inside was a note. He says, John, your life is before you. Fill these pages with kind acts, good thoughts, and matters of your heart. You write a great story with your life. And I think this is something that's kind of cool because she gave him a book that's called The Greatest Story Ever Told, but it's a book where you write what you're doing, your thoughts, where your heart's at. You write about your life because your life, you want it to be the greatest story ever told, right? So he remembers the excitement and anticipation that surged through him when he was about to read her words, but for the first time made him think about how he was the author of his life and how he could fill the page with whatever he wanted. So, the journey of significance. The words he wrote on those pages were about his dream of making a difference. As a way to reflect on them today, he wrote these things down, and these 4 things. And we're only going to go through 2 of them today, and then we'll go through 2 more next week. He put down, 1, I want to make a difference. 2, do something that makes a difference. 3, with people who want to make a difference. And 4, at a time when it makes a difference. So we're going to walk through these steps a little bit, step by step. And in number 1, he wrote down, I want to make a difference. Make your life count. And he has a story he puts here, and I'm going to read through this story. He says he remembers watching Reese Witherspoon acceptance speech after she won the Academy Award for Best Actress for her portrayal of June Carter Cash in The Walk the Line. He said Witherspoon said that people often asked June how she was doing, and she would say, I'm just trying to matter. Reese says she understood exactly what June meant when she, too, was trying to make her life matter by living a good life and doing work that meant something to somebody. That evening, he felt that her words spoke right from the heart. He writes down all his life, I've wanted to make my life matter to other people. Isn't that what you want as well? I bet right now, as you read the words, I want my life to make a difference, it resonates within you, right? If we're just talking about like when you're coming to want to make a significance with people, most of the time, the first thing you think about when you say I want to make a significance or I want to make a difference is you basically end up saying I want my life to make a difference. You want to do something that will make a difference to others, right? So, something he calls he discovered something that making a positive difference in lives of people creates a positive influence in his life. And what he calls it the significance boomerang, which I think is a pretty cool little term because basically anytime you throw that boomerang, right, and you're making a positive difference in someone else's life, that means other people will start to make a positive difference in yours as well. So he calls it the significance boomerang. You throw it out to others and it returns to you. So a couple of different things he has that he shows. He talks about between people who experience high morale versus people who have low morale. He talks about how high morale people continually make a positive difference, right? People who are usually high up in morale. Who do you usually have that leads? Like if you're leading a football team or like a sports, right? Whatever, just for example. Usually if you want someone to corral the team together, you want the person who has the most morale to step in and be like, all right, guys, we got this. Let's do this. We're going to hype everybody up, make them feel like this is it, You're going to win this game. We're going to do the best we can. You'll find the person that has the highest morale. And the person with high morale will continually make a positive difference. But people with low morale seldom make any positive difference. High morale people are passionate about adding value to others, and low morale people are apathetic about adding value to others. Life is difficult and it's filled with challenges and seemingly more problems than answers. And if your heart has indifference, you will never find an answer. That resonates with me a lot because I've noticed when the last one we talked about, if you want to lead by example, you have to live what you say. It's the same thing with significance. If your heart is indifferent about the decisions you're making to make a difference, of course, you will never find an answer. If your heart wavers, people will not follow, right? You don't want your heart to waver on your values or who you are. The moment you start to crumble away from who you believe God wants you to be, people will start to see that, and then they'll pick at that, and they'll see their hearts wavering, and then people will start to challenge you, and then it makes things harder and just harder, and you'll feel like you're not going to ever find an answer to solve anything because your heart is indifferent. But if you have a heart to make a difference, there's always an answer, and when you find it, you'll embrace it and share it with others. John Maxwell mentions that John F. Kennedy, when he was president, he used to say that everyone has a change the world speech inside of them. And that's true of you and me and those around you in your business, your church, your organization, whatever it might be, right? Everyone in them has the capability to lead. Everyone in them has the capability to have I'm going to change the world, right, type of speech in them. What he calls it the significance gap. And he talks about how no matter how much you think you might be closing the significant gap sometimes, there's always room for improvement, right? You can never not stop improving. I know some people, I saw someone, we were talking to them about Jesus one time, and I was talking to them, and they were like, yeah, I already have Jesus in my heart, that's all I need. I don't need more of it or more of the Bible or anything like that. And I was like, what do you mean? The Bible is an overflowing, never-ending word of knowledge. God is an overflowing, never-ending knowledge giver. I was like, if you feel like what you have already isn't like, that's it, that's donezo, right? It's enough. Well, how are you going to fulfill what God wants you to do? You're never going to step into the purpose that God is trying to give you because, unfortunately, you believe that just because you accepted Jesus and that's that, and you're going to do nothing with it, there's no difference going to be made. The only difference between you and a sinner is that you said you accepted Jesus and then you're still living your life normal or however else you feel like you've been living your life. The only difference you have now is, I accepted Jesus in my heart. That's it. Jesus didn't say just accept him in his heart. He says accept him and follow, right? You want to follow in his footsteps, do what he does. We want to walk like God, talk like God, think like God, be like God, like Dad says. We're not meant to just accept Jesus in our hearts and follow what God has to say. Or, not follow. We're not just, let me reword that. We're not meant to only just accept Jesus. We're also meant to follow as well, as what we're supposed to do, right? So there's always room for improvement, which means there's always more room for God. There's always more room for Jesus in your heart as well. There's always more room for the Holy Spirit, right? If you act like you have no room for those things, but you're doing lots of other things throughout your day and you're making no difference, right? Of course, you're not going to feel any improvement. Dad's currently doing the 30-day challenge, and if some of you have been following along on the 30-day challenge, right, because right now we're on day 24, and we'll be making a video of day 24 and posting that later today as well. But I don't know if some of you have been following along on the 30-day challenge, you'll see that every single day, Dad stayed consistent, right? And it's hard, and it's very challenging because it's a lot of reading to do. It's a lot of the Bible. That's most of his day being spent to try and do the challenge. But the thing is, there's consistency, right? We haven't uploaded or missed a single upload any day so far. We've been staying on put with things, right? Making sure that we show people, like, look, don't be discouraged. There's always room to keep improving, right? If you can read the Bible through that much throughout 1 year, or that, like, read through the whole Bible in 1 month, like we're trying to do for this challenge, God will show even more difference. There's always room for improvement. Don't ever believe just because you've already accepted Jesus and you're doing some stuff that you don't need more of God or you don't need more of the Holy Spirit, right? You can always get more. There's an overflowing amount of power that God has. So don't act like you have. Just because you already have a little bit of God means that that's enough of God. You don't want just the bare minimum of what God wants for you. You want everything that God has for you, right? That's what we want. We want everything that God has for us. But John Maxwell writes down, when it comes to making room for improvement, he says, fortunately, there are two things, right? They're very simple. First, he says, start small. If you want to make a difference, start small. Small differences over time make a big difference, right? And he says he does not have to save the world. You don't have to save the world, but he can make a difference where he lives. And so can we, right? We can make a difference where we live. Small differences over time make a big difference. And for example, I don't know if everyone ever notices, right? But like when you do something small, sometimes that small thing might have a slight change in how people act towards you, right? Just a little bit of a demeanor switch, or even like how your tone sounds when you talk to certain people, or if your body language kind of shifts a little bit, like you're kind of like, you're like not really looking at them, whatever it might be, right? Some people don't realize, but when it comes to making a difference and influencing people, even your slight switch in tone, right, will make them feel less significant and like you don't care about them as much because you switched your tone just a little bit. You'll notice it the most, especially when you're very close. When you have people that you are very close with, friends, family, spouse, girlfriend, whatever it might be, right? Best friend, someone, people that you're very close with, they're the ones that will point that out, right? Like, hey, man, you seem like you've been very happy today, right? But I saw you act just slightly different with how you were talking to people. Are you okay? And it's like, how would you even notice that, right? How would you even notice that small difference that I made, or in the way I acted, or how I did something, right? That makes it seem like I'm not having a good day or that I'm upset, right? It's because they see it. They're around you. These people are close, right? They're around you so much, they can see the small changes. So if you're going to make, right, the biggest difference in people around you, the small things is what matters, right? And then the next thing he says, start now, right? There's never a perfect time to start, so just start now. Now is the only time you have. We over-exaggerate yesterday, overestimate tomorrow, and underestimate today. I love that little phrase. I'm going to say it again. He says we over-exaggerate yesterday, we overestimate tomorrow, and underestimated today. Today matters, right? What we do today, what we do the next day, does not, today matters. If you can't start now with trying to make a difference, in the people around you or the people that watch, right? Especially everyone that watches this, right? If we don't start today to try and make a difference, to tell people about what God's saying, to try and make a difference in some way to other people's lives, and we don't start making the difference immediately, you'll make no difference, right? So that's why we start today. That's why we do the morning stuff that Dad does in the mornings, right? Dad comes to church every morning. We do a little morning broadcast thing. We do that every morning because there's always something going on that day. We're never going to not do something that day, right? And then going on to number 2, doing something that makes a difference. John Maxwell says, find your purpose. He mentions a quote that's written by Harold Kushner. It says, our souls are not hungry for fame, comfort, wealth, or power. Those rewards create almost as many problems as they solve. Our souls are hungry for meaning, for the sense that we have figured out how to live so that our lives matter, so that the world will at least be a little bit different for our having passed through it, right? If you remember in the Bible, Peter would walk along people and cast shadows. His shadows would heal anybody he walked by, right? Isn't that, like, that's powerful? So, like, for me, just reading through this quote, that little bit of difference that we need to make as we pass through it. We don't even have to stop to talk to people. It's how we represent ourselves when passing through life, when going by people. When they see, hey, you know that guy that preaches at so-and-so place, or you know that guy that owns this place? I saw him walking along in the mall the other day. Man, he seems like a really nice guy. Like, he was just walking by, just being really big smile, right? I saw him greeting people, just waving at someone, whatever it might be. People will realize if you have a name attached to your fame, people will recognize you, right? And because they recognize you, they will point you out. That's why in Hollywood, so many people are recognized because their name is plastered somewhere throughout the world. They're on video, they're online somewhere, right? They're in big movies, whatever it might be. So when people see your name attached to fame, they'll recognize you. And what do? They'll watch, right? They'll watch. So however you walk, however you talk, however you act in front of people, they'll see it. And you don't even have to interact with them. You're just passing by. And because you're passing by, looks like you're not a very good person, or that you have an angry demeanor, or you seem to be not the kindest person to some people when you're walking by, or they kind of like, they see like you just don't care, right? They'll notice. People notice. I think that's one of the biggest things. When it comes to making a difference, you have to realize as a leader or someone who has potential to lead, people pay attention. People watch, right? They'll see how you change. They'll see how you act. People watch. I think that's the biggest thing. If you don't recognize that people are seeing what you are doing and you're living your life nonchalantly without feeling like, oh, I don't got to worry about what no one else says, it's like, that's good. Don't worry about what anyone has to say about how you're living your life, right? But you also don't want to live a life that has no influence either. Because if you're going out day by day, doing the things that you do, and people only see you as just somebody that's kind of not going to make a difference, right? They're going to be like, well, I don't want to talk to that guy. Well, why would I follow that guy? Why would I listen to that guy? Why would I want him to be my leader? Why would I want to listen to what he has to say if he clearly makes no difference already, right? You want to be someone who can pass through life where someone can say, hey, I know that guy. That guy does great things, right? A legacy. John Maxwell talks about in the previous books that I've brought up before, you don't want to leave nothing behind. You want to leave legacy, right? You want people to see the significance of your story. Like we mentioned in this first section right here, he got that book, you know, and when he got that book, he saw that the greatest story ever told was blank, because the greatest story ever told is whatever story you write down. You are writing your greatest story, right? Whatever you do, whatever actions you make, whatever memories get brought up from the things that you do throughout your life, that's your story, and it is your job to write the greatest story ever told, right? I think that's so cool. I kind of want to see if I can find this book, but because it's just like a blank book. But I think it's really unique because, like, you're the author of your story. Now, God is the publisher, right? He's the one that's in charge of that. He's like, hey, I see what you're doing. Maybe you should change some things. That's just kind of how God, that's how we got to interact with God. It's like, hey, God, we know we're writing our story, but maybe you should publish it and see what's going on. Tell me what I need to do to change, just fix a little bit. You know what I mean? Because the publisher will look over the author's stuff and be like, hey, yes, we can publish this. Or, hey, maybe you should change this, right? You never can really, you can't put a book out unless you have a publisher. But the quote I mentioned, he says that it makes you hungry to make life matter, right? It makes you hungry to make life matter. The question he asked was not, could I make a difference, right? It was, what kind of difference can I make? See that slight switch in the wording, right? That slight switch in the wording. It's not, could I make a difference? It is, what kind of difference can I make? So like I said, just that slight switch in the words can make such a huge difference in someone's life. Because like I said, if you're passing through, right, and people see that demeanor, or people you're really close to see a slight switch in your tone, they ask you, are you okay, right? It's because you acted slightly different, right? Remember how I said the small things matter? Well, that small wording matters, right? If you keep telling people, hey, could I really make a difference, though? What are you doing? Showing doubt in yourself. Showing doubt in what God has planned for you. Showing doubt in the capabilities that you have, correct? By saying, can I or could I, just shows that you don't have faith in who God is wanting you to be. You are letting yourself down by putting words as can or can I. The one thing that I learned growing up as well, when I was doing Taekwondo and mixed martial arts and stuff, my instructor, anytime that we said, I don't know if I can do this, or I don't think I can do this, he was like, what was that? We were like, what? He's like, okay, get down 10 push-ups right now. And we were like, what? He's like, yep, do 10 push-ups. So like every time we said we couldn't or can't or we're not sure if we can, he would discipline us and tell us push-ups, squats, crunches. He'd make us do stuff to he'd be like, you don't say you can. He's like, the one rule he had, never say you can't do something. Right? He said, never say you can't do something. And I thought that was really cool because that gave me a mentality when I was doing mixed martial arts and karate every time, or MMA, every time I did something, I was like, man, I'm really struggling with this. He's like, yeah. He's like, so what are you going to do? I was like, but I can do it. He's like, I'm struggling. Like, this is very hard. But I would not say the word can't because I knew if I said can't, I had to do 10 or 30 or 50 push-ups. I had to do 10, 30, or 50 squats. I had to do 10, 20, or 30 or 50 crunches. And I was like, I don't want to do that stuff, right? But it's the same thing. When you decide to tell yourself, hey, I don't think I'm capable of doing this, or you start questioning, right, what you're able to do, you're putting a limit and you're kind of adding a punishment to yourself, right? Because by saying you can't do something or could I really do this, you're basically saying I'm not capable. I'm not capable. But by switching the question and saying what kind of difference can I make, you have the mentality to say it's definitely possible, right? It's 100% possible. So to answer that question, he found a couple things. He had to find his purpose, and here's what he discovered. John Maxwell puts down one. Start with one word. When you think of making your life count, what is the one word that best describes you? This will take some time, but he says the exercise will give you a great return. So just find that, right? Get to that one word, write down 5 that seem to be best to describe who you are. Then thoughtfully begin eliminating words until you get to the one word. John says when he did the exercise, his 5 words were serve, give, share, lead, and work. And after many discussions with people who knew him very well and a lot of personal reflection, he selected the word lead for himself. That word became the foundation for his purpose in life, and that word now had to fulfill attention and intention. His discovery, I focus on expands, is what he says. What I focus on expands. So he had to find that one word, right? So we just start with one word. So I kind of like the exercise. So if you're watching just for encouragement, you can write this down. Like I said, just try to find that one word. What John did was he wrote down 5 words that he seemed to best describe himself. Then he started to eliminate those words one by one until he found the one word that he thought best described him, right? But he also helped other people, had other people were involved. He asked other people, like, hey, here are these 5 words. What do you think out of these 5 words best describes me, right? And he would start to eliminate that, and also some personal reflection. Then he chose that one word, and then he focused on that, and then he found out something, right? Now, number 2, ask yourself 2 questions. The first question you have to ask yourself is, what is my passion? A mentor of his gave him this question to help him discover his passion, and he asked him, John, if you could do anything you wanted to do and be anything you wanted to be, what would you do and be? After much time, John answered, I would be a leader who adds value to people. And he's been doing that for 50 years now, right? Yeah, he'll be a leader that adds value to people. So he challenges you to ask yourself this first question, which is, what is your passion, right? Or what is my passion? Make it personal. What is my passion, right? And then once you've done that, you can move on to the second question once you've figured out the first one, right? I think that's the thing some people try to, it's misleading to them in some ways, because like they try to do this one thing where it's like, well, I can ask the first question, but I already have the answer to the second question, right? So they skip the first, but you can't skip steps, right? If you skip steps, you learn less, right? When you skip steps, you're skipping value, you're skipping lessons, you're skipping things that could help in the beginning, right? When you're taking steps up to learn and you try to skip steps, you're losing a lot of added value that could have been added to your life by learning things in the beginning, by trying to learn things way, way later. You know, like you're like, hey, these things are the basics, right? In any sport, to be good at that sport, right, you have to learn basics. If you don't know the basics of the sport, you're not going to be very good at it. If you're doing sprinting, for example, but you don't do any exercises to sprint, you're just naturally fast, but you're winning some races, but you could be better, and you could win even better races and go even faster, but because you decided to skip the basics of training, of how to really work your legs and how to really take off at the beginning of the 100-meter dash, or how to like really make sure that you work your legs specifically for sprinting, you're skipping the basics of taking off. You're skipping the basics of being faster. So don't skip the first question, right? First, figure out what is your passion. And then once you figure that out, he says move on to the second question and ask yourself, which was, what are your strengths? You have a few abilities that make you unique. So what are they? Find them. You were created for a purpose and given abilities that will enable you to accomplish that purpose. So once you discover your strength, commit yourself to daily improve in those areas, and this will make your strength stronger and set you up for success, right, in living out your purpose. Number 3, he says, write your purpose statement. A purpose statement is a written down reason for being and doing. Clarity is power, right? When you have clarity on what you need to write down, it has power. So once you're clear about why you live on this earth, then whatever you do becomes a means to accomplishing your mission. So John Maxwell's purpose statement was add value to leaders who multiply value to others. Everything he does includes his purpose statement. His companies add value to leaders every day who multiply value to others. So when he speaks, he intentionally adds values to leaders who multiply value to others. When he writes books, same thing, right? This is why he gets excited about these kind of things. So it is out of that respect, plus having discussions with people around him, right, that the idea of writing the books that he writes is birthed, especially the one I'm reading right now. So you have to ask yourself, what would happen if every person in what he does would help them to understand and do the essentials of these things, right? So what you're going to do is you need to write your purpose statement and live out your purpose statement. So you're starting off with the one word, what word defines you? And you ask yourself 2 questions. What is your passion? What are your strengths? And then you got to write out your purpose statement. By writing out your purpose statement, you'll figure out what your life has to basically kind of revolve around in a way, right? His purpose statement was add value to leaders who multiply value to others. And by doing that, he has lived out that purpose statement throughout his businesses, the books he writes, the industries he has, right? All of it. He lives it out through all of it. you want to be able to do that too. And the last thing he writes down is take action every day on your purpose. He says in the movie Pay It Forward, Mr. Simone challenged his class to make a difference in the lives of others. He looked at his students and challenged them with these words: think of an idea to change our world, then put it into action. He realized that most people in their desire to do something significant never bridge the space between knowing and doing. Richard Bach, who wrote Jonathan Livingston Seagull, has a single test to determine whether your mission in life is accomplished. If you're alive, it isn't. I assume if you're reading this, you are still alive, John Maxwell says, but so get busy. He said, find your purpose and practice it every day. Someone is waiting for you to make a difference in their life, right? So if you're alive, that means it isn't done, right? Living out the purpose you have isn't over with. Every single day, no matter what you do, because like I said, right, when you're just passing through people, what you do, how you act, if your name has fame attached to that, right, you'll be recognized. So if you want to make a name for yourself to other people, you have to be able to do that. And by doing that, you need to start living out the purpose you have. And once you start living out the purpose you have, people will start to see that, and then you can start to lead them right to God, start to lead them to Christ, start showing them who they are in God, and start making a true difference in the world. Because without knowing your purpose, no difference will be made, right? If there's one thing about relationships is like basically saying, if you can't know who you are in a relationship before you get into one, that relationship usually is going to struggle or crumble, for that matter, because you don't know who you are, right? If a person can't see who you are in the relationship, whether it be friendships or spouse or just family, whatever it might be, right? If they can't see who you are because you don't know who you are, of course you're going to struggle in that relationship because you can't even add value to yourself, right? You can't even add value to yourself, and that's not what we want. We want you to find your purpose and who you are so that you not can only live your purpose in God, but your purpose in others as well. We want to add value to others. John Maxwell encourages us to add value to others all the time, right? And that doesn't have to be our mission statement, but it is still a good way of life to live, to add value to others. And by doing that, we'll also find what our purpose is when it comes to leading people as well. There are 2 more sections to this, but I'm not going to read them. Like I said, I was going to read that next week already. I already said that in the beginning of the session. So, but I just kind of want to reiterate what we went through just slightly. So we said the first thing we did was I want to make a difference, which is make your life count. And then I mentioned the second thing was do something that makes a difference, find your purpose, right? And then the other 2 things that we'll go through next week with people who want to make a difference and at a time when it makes a difference. And we'll get to that, and I'll explain to that more and read what John Maxwell has to say on that. But for now, these are just the 2 things I wanted to read because they're still very significant and just being those 2 things at the moment. So once again, if you want to make a difference, make your life count. Do something that makes a difference, find your purpose. You want to find your purpose, you want to make life count, right? Don't try to be like everyone else. Find out who you are. When you try to, we see it throughout high school, like I mentioned the other week, right? People will take their high school way of thinking and put that into their adulthood, and they'll create their little cliques and try to blend in with everybody else. Does not matter. You know how many people are making lots of money and are very successful, and they don't care about being included into everyone's huge, famous, millionaire group of friends, whatever it might be. They don't care about all that, right? You don't have to worry. You don't got to be involved in all that. God has a plan. God has a purpose. He knows what he wants you to do. You just have to figure out what your purpose is and then live it. And by living it, you'll make a difference, right? My dad put up the scan to give thing. So if you wanna give, we have Venmo, Cash App, Zelle, and I just want to bless you as well. We also have, if you can go on swordministries.org/donate if you want to donate that way as well. But I'll go ahead and pray and just close off the session. So, Lord, thank you for this morning. We thank you for what you're doing in our lives right now. We pray that as we move forward in the things that we want to do, that we start to make a significant difference in others' lives when we start to find who we are in you, Lord. I just want to pray if we're not sure what our purpose is, if someone's not exactly sure what they need to be doing right now, God, that you start to give them wisdom, you start to give them understanding, you start to show them what the Bible has to say and what they need to do to figure out what their purpose is and whatever it might be. If their purpose is to lead a massive company, show them how to lead it. If their purpose is to lead a church, show them how to lead a church. If their purpose is just to lead some people, show them how to lead some people, right? So, Lord, we just want to pray that you show them their purpose, their significance, give them meaning in their life.